Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful brand new Wednesday. It is a gorgeous day here in the Enchanted Forest. And I hope that it's a gorgeous day, evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you happen to be as well. For those of you that are out there listening, come on into the chat room. I just opened it up and all are welcome. Hey, good morning, Kelly Spencer. Out there in Spencer Woods, I know it's a beautiful morning. And today we're going to be talking about listening, spiritual listening, listening to soul, listening to spirit. And that'll be the subject for today. If you would be so kind, if you are there on the app and you could hit the like button, or in other words, the heart underneath the American Mystic, that would be fantastic. It helps to get the show distributed when people like the show. And for those of you that are listening to me via my YouTube channel, thank you for doing so, number one. And if you could give it a like, that would be outstanding. So this morning, I have all of my empowerment decks sitting here next to me. And I thought that it would be fun to pick a card from the empowerment decks from the Mystic's Heart Publishing, aka me and my good friend David Fix. The Temple Within and Hearth Production came together and we created the Mystic's Heart and all of the empowerment decks associated with the Mystic's Heart. All right. I'm going to choose a card for everybody this morning. And the card that is chosen comes from the Spirit of Mythology Empowerment deck, and it is the card that I have named the White Eagle card. And another one just flew out of the deck. Excuse me while I pick it up. It's the Blue Lotus card from the Mysteries of Ancient Egypt Empowerment deck. Where can you get those? Check it out at templewithin.com. Go to the books and the empowerment decks and you can order a deck, or you can get them digitally as well to have with you all the time. So the White Eagle card is festooned with David's astonishing artwork. And here's what it has to say. White Eagle represents the teachings of the wisdom of the stars, the elements of air and light. And the White Eagle itself actually comes from the mythology of Atlantis. I love that. The message is ancient teachings are being revealed to you at this time. Become aware of the messages that are coming to you in your night dreams and daydreams. Be open to the teachings that are being sent to you by your spiritual teachers from the physical and non-physical realms. Take time to consider what your personal experiences and encounters are trying to reveal to you. This is a time of great spiritual growth. If you are willing to slow down, go within, pay attention, and trust your soul's connection to the divine mind. And the mantra of the White Eagle card is this: I hear the voices of the ancient ones speaking to me in my meditations and dreams. The Blue Lotus card from the Mysteries of Ancient Egypt Empowerment deck is all about maintaining a healthy balance during our human experience and being grateful. Being grateful. In order to maintain a healthy balance during our human experience, our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies require adequate rest in order to rise and shine. So it's all about taking good care of this wonderful vehicle that we have and making sure that it gets enough rest, downtime, fun time, no drama time. So there you have it, the ancient ones. This new title that I've given my weekly show, The American Mystic, has resulted in quite a few interesting comments from people. and I think realizations from people. And one of the questions that came to me was, if we here in America are American mystics, does that mean then that we should be cutting ties with our ancient ancestors from other places? And nothing could be further from the truth. One of the beautiful things about being an American mystic is that for most of us, not all of us, but for most of us, we have many lineages, we have many bloodlines that come from extraordinary places all around Grandmother Earth. And rather than negate them and just say, well, I live in America, so I'm going to do America, you know, that's one way of doing it, of course. But if you really want to understand what it is to be an American mystic, at least in my mind, and this is just one woman's thoughts about it, what makes us unique here in America are the bloodlines and the ties to other places around Grandmother Earth. So rather than just to negate those ties, to break those ties, ignore those ties, I feel we should be doing the opposite and digging into learning about the places that our ancestors came from. Because those ancestors live in our blood, in our bones, along with, I believe, their experiences, both good, bad, neutral, all of the above. I read something recently that said the only people who are absolutely obsessed with ancestry here on Grandmother Earth are the Americans. And I read all kinds of comments underneath this meme about how we in America are absolutely obsessed with our ancestry. And some of the comments went something like this: well, of course, Americans are mostly, except for the 1% of the population that is Native American, right? In 300 and some million people here in the United States, about 5 million people, that's not an exact number, are Native American, tribally affiliated, maybe non-affiliated, but Native American. So about 1%, a little over 1% of our population is Native American. Everybody else, for the most part, immigrated at some point. Their ancestors did, or they did, here to the United States. So yes, there is an interest in knowing where our people came from because, you know, for being honest, a long, long time ago, most of our relatives came here either by force, by necessity, to stay alive, to escape from. There are a lot of reasons, and there were those that came here to start something new. A lot of reasons, and a lot of the history was lost. It was lost because many of our relatives came here to leave something behind, and they did, to become what we call an American. And now with the ability to look at our DNA, yes, we here in the United States tend to be a little obsessive about, well, where did we come from? What's that like to know that your family has always been on that same plot of land in Ireland or in Europe or in the UK or in the Middle East or wherever you happen to be from, to understand that your family has been there for thousands of years and you're there right now enjoying that? That is a magnificent thing. For most of us here in America, we don't share that. We don't share that. I have Native American ancestors that have always been on this continent. Some of my Celtic ancestors have been here for about 500 years, maybe 600 years in this country. So for us, having the opportunity to learn more about our antiquity is, yes, it's something that we are diving headlong into. And there were other comments from people abroad saying, well, you know, it just really puts my knickers in a knot when I see or I hear an American say something like, I'm an Irish American, or I'm a Scottish American, or I'm a whatever American. They don't live here, so they can't call themselves that. I suppose there's always got to be, you know, a turd in the punch bowl, as they say. Yes, here in America, when we understand where we came from, we are proud of that. And we may refer to ourselves as an Irish American or a Scottish American or an American with Scottish roots, or an American with Swedish roots, or Norwegian roots. And I think that's marvelous. Honoring the ancestors is marvelous. Honoring the ancestors, working with the ancestors, whether we know them by name or not, is one of the most beneficial parts of being a mystic. It's one of the most glorious parts, splendid parts of being a mystic, is that we come to understand that part of the mystery of this life is that we are made up of our ancestors. They're in our blood, they're in our bones. We have remembrances from them. We have likes, dislikes, proclivities, gifts, talents that we carry through because of our ancestors. And it's our ancestors that help us spiritually. Well, they help us with mundane things as well in the course of our life. Of course they do. But for the American mystic, understanding where our ancestors came from and the history of those places, and if we're blessed enough to visit those places, I've been to most every place that my ancestors have come from. I do need to get to Madagascar and the Congo. I've not yet been to those parts of the world, but I have been to just about every part of the world. I've not yet been to Norway or the Netherlands, and I will get there. I've visited all of the other places that make up the Celtic bloodline and my African bloodline and the Native bloodline, Native American bloodline. I want to know the feeling of that soil. I want to know the feeling and the smells in the markets, in the sacred spaces, in the sacred places. I want to experience those, not only for myself, but for my ancestors. Last year, the year before, when I was in Ireland last with Amantha Murphy, I took a group, and one of the greatest things for me, having recently discovered who my biological family is and where they came from, thank you Ancestry.com and 23andMe, being there in Ireland as an American mystic afforded me the opportunity to feel the ground, to touch the trees, to smell the ocean, to sit on the rocks and the stones, to communicate with the spirit of Ireland, to be there present with myself, but also to be very present with the spirit of my ancestors that once lived on that beautiful Emerald Island. To see with them, to listen with them, to listen to them speaking to me. Our ancestors are always speaking to us and through us and around us. Do we listen? Do we pay attention? Most often, I would say for the majority of folks, probably not. But we can. Listening to spirit, listening to our soul is often a very subtle art. It comes in waves of knowing. Maybe we're hearing something inside our head. Maybe a thought crops up in our mind. Maybe a memory goes scrolling by. Maybe we are inspired to hear a song. All of a sudden we want to listen to a certain artist or to a certain song, or that song goes rolling through our brain. Or maybe we're hearing our ancestors speaking to us right out loud. Dana, listen. I had that experience many, many years ago. So loud, living in my very first home and upstairs making my bed. The kids were downstairs and I heard someone say my name very loud. It was a woman. Dana, listen. And I just stopped. And I sat with the voice. Who are you? What is it that you want me to listen to? And as I recall the story, it seemed to me, it felt to me that it was the voice of an angel. I wasn't scared. I wasn't unnerved. I had deep gratitude for Spirit reaching through the vibrations, the octaves, the tones of realities to say hello. To let me know that something, someone was there with me. The voice was beautiful. Sometimes we hear the voices right out loud. I've had that on many occasions in my life. Most often, the voice is very subtle. Sometimes the voice produces words that I can see in writing. Sometimes those voices produce images that we can see, thoughts that we can feel. That's also listening. It's listening to the way that our body, listening to the way that our imagination is interpreting information, messages coming to us. And each of us has a unique way of listening, of interpreting. Some people will listen and create art. Some people will listen and build a garden. Some people will listen and write a book. Right? There are so many ways that we listen. We're influenced by, inspired by. And do we take any time to speak to Spirit during the day? I mean, conversation usually goes both ways. It should go both ways. I talk to my ancestors every day. I spoke to them before I knew them by name. When you're an adopted person, you know who your adopted ancestors are, oftentimes. You might not know your biological ancestors. And even if you don't know your biological ancestors, when you call out to your ancestors, they hear you. They feel you. They sense you. And you in turn will sense them in your own blood, in your bones, in your psyche, in your emotions, your memories, if you take the time to be a good conversationalist. Not a fly-by conversationalist, but a good conversationalist. And when we're listening to our ancestors, who is it that we probably want to listen to? Well, we can call on Granddad and Grandma. A lot of people do that. Grandma helped me with this. Grandma, I can't find your jam recipe. Remind me where you put it. But when we want to really listen to the antiquity of the bloodline, the antiquity of our ancestors in ceremony, or just in daily conversation with the ancestors, I have kind of coined a phrase. I call them my illuminated ancestors. I want to talk to those that have made their journey back to the realm of the ancestral stardust, I call it. The wise ones, the illuminated ones. Those are the ancestors that I want to speak to. And I want to hear from all of them, not just a certain group of them. There are a lot of people I've noticed that only claim to be one part of their ancestry. They negate all other parts of their ancestry. I guess I'm not one of those people. Well, I'm not one of those people. I want to listen to what all of my ancestors, my illuminated ancestors, have to share with me. Those of the Celtic, and when I say Celtic, Celtic is Northern European and the UK and Ireland and all of that. Those are my Celtic ancestors. I want to hear from all of them. I claim all of them. They claim me, I hope. I want to hear from my African ancestors, those that came from the Congo, Nigeria, Madagascar, Egypt. I want to hear from all of those ancestors of mine too. I want to hear from my ancestors that were here first on Turtle Island, my Creek ancestors, my Cherokee ancestors the Seminoles. I want to hear from them too. I don't claim just one or the other. I want to honor all of them, and I do here in my home. I always have, even before I knew, right? Before I had the science that we Americans are so famous for coveting right now. I honor all of them. I honor all of their skin tones, their eye colors, all of them. Without them, there wouldn't be me. Without them, there wouldn't be me. So I listen to what they have to say. I have a sacred space right here in my office, in my studio, dedicated to my ancestors. All of them, not just one group of them, not just the ones with the white skin or the brown skin or the black skin, all of them. They're all me. They're all part of my mystic journey. And every morning when I light the candle on that altar, I sit with them for a minute. Good morning to my ancestors. Good morning to my illuminated ancestors. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with me, and thank you for bringing me to your wisdom. And then I watch and I listen throughout the course of the day. I watch for the signs. I listen to my body. I listen to what they share with me in my meditation times, my prayer times. I think it's really important on the mystic's journey and embracing the mystic path that we include all of our ancestors. And what I've found, in working with people, my clients and my students, is oftentimes it's the ancestors that people don't want to pay attention to or they don't want to acknowledge. Those are actually the ones that need to be acknowledged and listened to the most. What do you mean you don't honor your Polish relatives? Why don't you honor your Polish relatives? Well, from what I understand, they were blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, but whose version of that are you listening to? And let's take another look at that. Maybe that's the part of the ancestry that could use a little healing. Maybe. And maybe your reticence to work with your Polish ancestors is your hesitancy to do some ancestral healing work, beginning with yourself. Have you ever done that? I did that. Had to do with my Dutch relatives from the Netherlands, not the Dutch ones here in Michigan. But my relatives, my cousins, and I have cousins that, I have a whole raft of family members that still live in Denmark and Holland and Amsterdam. Half of my family still lives there. My mother's people. They still live there. Some of them were able to escape and come here after the First World War and avoided the Second World War. And some of them perished during the Second World War when the Nazis roared through the Netherlands. Right? And there are those that remain. I have hundreds that still remain. There was a hesitancy, which typically says to me, well, that's where you need to focus some work, Dee. You need to do some work there around that. Good morning, Del. Hihane washte chue. Good morning, Peggy. Listening to spirit means that we read the signs, pay attention to the signs with honesty. Listening means sometimes what we hear isn't what we want to hear. It's a knowing. Our body is it's like one big great ear horn. Remember back in the day, the old ear horn? Our body can be like one of those great big ear horns or hearing aids to spirit. If we tune it in right, we hold it just right, we can hear. I've always heard spirit. I don't remember a time when I haven't heard spirit, either right out loud like I'm talking to you, or in the subtle vibratory tones. I've always been able to hear. A lot of what I hear is marvelous. Some of what I hear is and there are those times when, oh my God, I didn't need to hear that. Don't tell me that, I'll say. I don't want to hear that. And the ancestors will say, well, baby, you don't want to hear it, but here it is. Woo! Sometimes when our physical body is busy during the day, we are most able to listen to spirit in meditation, contemplation, a walk in the park, shower, or in the dreamtime landscape. In our dreams, spirit can talk to us freely. Sometimes we remember, sometimes we don't. 99% of the time I remember my dreams. 1% of the time I don't remember them. That's okay too. But we can have great conversations, can't we, in our what we call the dream time? Actually, I believe that all of this human experience is a dream time. We have the daytime dream, I call it, and the nocturnal time dream. It's all a dream. Row, row, row your boat. Do the animals speak to us? I believe they do. Does the flora and fauna? I believe they do. And what about the angels? What about saints? I believe they do. Well, it's not even that I believe, I know they do. At 58 years old, I can say with a surety, I know they do. Everything is always speaking. Everything is always speaking. Slowing down and paying attention and understanding the way that we are capable of listening. It's not always auditory. It's not always what we think of listening with our ears. We can listen through feelings, inspirations, again, knowing. We just know something. Spirit spoke to me. Well, how did Spirit speak to you? What did it sound like? Well, it didn't really sound like anything. It felt like something. Oh, I sensed it. It didn't like just talk to me. I sensed it. Oh, yeah, okay, got that. Yep. It's listening to the way your body interprets the frequencies. Taking good care of your body. Yesterday, it seems, I was actually speaking with my sister Barbara, and in the middle of my conversation with my wonderful Chue, it seems as though I had a bit of I call them neurological events. Todd got me to the doctor right away. So, and there's further testing coming up with said event. Every time I have one of those said events, neurological events, one thing that I do know is that, and I've come to appreciate, that the experiences that we have as mystics, as seers, as sensitives, as empaths, I've learned to look at what the gift is. For myself, I've learned that the neurological events, the mini strokes, the TIAs, call them, all of that business, is tweaking my neurology. I also understand that it's spirit saying, slow down. Slow down, clear the calendar, go within. And I also understand that every time I have one of those neurological events, spirit comes closer to me. Spirit comes much closer to me. And I'll ask the question. And I'll listen for an answer, What am I to learn from this? What's happening? What's going on? Slow down, Dana. So I'm slowing down. Mostly with, my one-on-one readings for people, with people. It's a necessity. To which I say to my ancestors, you mean I'm not 17 anymore? Come on. Right, Kelly? What do you mean I'm not 17 anymore? I'm not, Oh, goodness. Part of the mystery and the mystic's journey is understanding the wheel of life, the seasons of life. There's a reason that my hair is silver now. It's part of the season. My sister Dell would say it's part of the wheel, the sacred hoop, the seasons. Listening to the nature of your own body, of your years, is important. Listening to that, honoring that. It's kind of like not honoring all of the ancestors. And I'm not saying that when I say honoring all of the ancestors, I mean the broad scope of your bloodlines. Why be ashamed of one group or the other, right? I don't understand. I don't get that. I don't get that. And maybe that's from a perspective of somebody who is an adopted person. And my definition of family is probably vastly different than most people. I love my adopted relatives as much as I love my biological relatives, and I honor all of them and all of their bloodlines and all whom they love. I don't care about their shape, their size, their eye color, their skin color. I just want to know if they're a good person or not. But anyway, having said all of that, honoring them all is where we get so many wonderful gifts. The teachings, the understandings, the wisdoms that are shared. That's part of the mystic's journey, isn't it? And part of that journey is understanding that everything around us is alive. That is one of the teachings that I understood very clearly in my adoptive family home. We were raised to understand that everything had the Creator existing within it. The stones, the trees, everything. So I grew up with that benefit because not everybody grows up with the benefit of those teachings. I did. It was just understood. I was never taught anything different. I was always taught that God, the Creator, was a God of love, not punishment, not any of that. Love. always. Honoring life around us and the seasons. You know, as we say, as we get older, I believe, where did this year go? Todd and I just said the other day, can you believe we're in the middle of July? Where did that time go? Where did that time go? And when we take a look at ourselves as part of the wheel, as part of the turning of the wheel, as Amantha Murphy would say, honoring our place in the wheel, in the season of our human lifetime, and listening to the wisdom of our own soul. What have we learned? Sometimes we can put our own soul on the back burner. What have we learned? What do we know? Nikki is saying, I am not ashamed, but I don't have an urge to know. I love all cultures and love to learn about all people, so I try to honor all, whether related to me through blood or not. Yeah, and some people there's no curiosity about any of that. There's just a general honoring of, I love that. I love that. Del Marie is sharing, I wish more people would be open to listening to their ancestors. Me too, Del. And you know, I think that it's becoming more prevalent. People wanting to understand, even if they don't want to do the genealogy. They don't care to know dates and times and birth certificates and all of that kind of a thing. But just to know, oh, well, check that out. I'm Celtic or I'm Mediterranean or whatever. You just want to know the nationality or the culture. Regardless of any of that, your ancestors are with you. Some people have their ancestors closer because they work with their ancestors on a regular basis, such as myself, Del Marie, Kelly. We work with them, we talk to them, we walk with them, we collaborate with them. And it's not always, I'm not always just listening to those in my bloodline. There are times, well, here's a for instance. Whenever, once a year, I will go down to my inipi, my sweat lodge, and I will do a ceremonial burning of the old prayer ties and the old ties, directional ties, inside my inipi that have been there for a year. And then I will put up fresh ones. Whenever I put up the fresh ones, I always ask for the assistance of my brother-in-law, Buzz, young man. I'll say, okay, Buzz, it's time for the refreshing of the lodge. If you could help me, I would really appreciate it. And then I feel the inspiration. I can feel his presence. And he assists me. Same thing happens when I put the teepee poles up. When those poles went up, and Kelly, you were there, we were tying all of the different colors. I used 7 different colors for my teepee pole colors, all the 7 directions. I always ask Buzz, this teepee is named after you, right? When the children come through, I tell them the story about Buzz. Which color on which of the poles? I don't even pretend or try to think that I can do any of this human lifetime on my own without the assistance of spirit. So whether it's the assistance of the saints, the angels, my spiritual allies, the Wakian, Oyate, the Thunder Nation, I walk in collaboration with Spirit as an American mystic. It's a collaboration. Being an American, unless you are 100% of one thing, Native American, Native or indigenous to this land, First Nations people, then you are a conglomerate, like a multinational corporation. I've seen too many young people be ashamed of their skin color, ashamed of their ancestry. I don't tell anybody I'm that. I don't want to admit that. Well, maybe you're here to admit that and to talk about it and to change some things. We're living in a changing time, aren't we? This is a time of great change, of astonishing conversations. Astonishing conversations. Really good conversations if you can get people that are respectful and not just hateful. Oh my goodness, with social media, some people are just hateful trolls, aren't they? I don't deal with them. I block them. If somebody's going to leave a hateful comment, I'm not talking about a conversational comment, but a hateful comment, you're blocked, you're done, you're gone. I don't have time for that. I don't have a desire to waste an ounce of my energy on racism, on ignorance, colorism, any of it. Just bye. I won't entertain it in my physical life either. Hatefulness. Won't do it. Bye. Because I have to listen to the voice of my soul that says, when are you going to cut that loose, that person loose, that thought loose, that experience loose? When are you going to let that go? Margaret is saying, prayers sent for your testing and healing. Wisdom can come from listening. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing ceremony in your beautiful lodge. I love being in my lodge. My Inipi. Yeah. Love that. You can hear the spirits right out loud usually inside the Inipi. They choose to talk right out loud oftentimes. Sometimes, though, it's subtle. You can feel it. You can feel them speaking to you in sacred space. But sacred space, to me, is everywhere you are. And I know that sounds kind of like a social media meme. Sacred space is everywhere that you are. But it's true. I believe it can be sacred space if you make it sacred space. Every encounter is a holy encounter. I do believe that. Sometimes it's holy smokes, isn't that awesome? And sometimes it's holy crap, really. But every encounter, I think there's a purpose. Sometimes it's to laugh and have some joy. One of the great things about the mystic's path is that, and especially for the American mystic, is that not only are we a conglomerate of races, ethnicities, nations, cultures, but oftentimes we're a conglomerate of religions and spiritual pathways. What do we do about that? How do we listen to all of those in our mind? In my mother's family, my biological mother, Catholicism goes way, way, way back. Not in her family, but in the man she married, my grandfather. Old Catholics. And I've had a proclivity toward Catholicism since I was a very young girl. And not necessarily the going to church part, because, that's when you're a kid, really. But I mean, with regard to the saints and the angels, I've had this love and this proclivity toward angels and saints. And coming to understand that, well, it's been in the bloodline for millennia, the saints and the angels and ceremony and ritual. Love that. And it's very clear in my home, my love for ritual and ceremony and saints and angels. But what about the Celtic relatives, those that never practiced an organized religion? Well, it's very clear in my home as well that sacred space is just that. It's in the music. It's in the connection to nature, to the 7 directions. And what about my love of Native America? Well, that goes back forever in the bloodline. Somebody was in my home not too long ago, and I have a photograph of my Grandpa King out. And they looked at my photograph. It's a great black and white of my granddaddy. And they looked at me and they said, he's clearly a Native American man. And I looked at them and I said, he was. And he was also a Celt. But yes. Yes. How do you blend all of that? Well, you are the blending. It's what you do with it. All of us as American mystics, we are a blending, with the exception of a few that are, look at Del Marie, look at Kelly Spencer. Kelly Spencer, what do you like? 99.99999 Swedish. I think her dad, Tom Holt, is like that. And there are a few people around in the United States that are that way. But I think it's probably kind of rare. For the most of us, we are an amalgam. We're like a pudding stone. Pudding stone. A little bit of this held together by a whole lot of that. What do we do with all that? We make it our own. We walk in a good way. Here in the United States, there's a rise in the practice of Southern root work, Southern conjure, Southern hoodoo. That is an amalgam of our African ancestors that came here on the slave ships, and Christian religion, and the European influence. That's hoodoo, that's Southern root work and conjure. There's a pickup in wanting to understand that. But is it okay, Denise, if I have an angel next to my blah, blah, next to my... Well, of course, is that... Yes, that's like saying you're imperfect. If I were to build an altar, well, I guess I have built an altar. So if I'm looking at my ancestral altar right now, it's a reflection of me. When I look at it, there is some red clay dirt from Georgia. There is some beautiful Zulu beadwork. There are some astonishing crow feathers and a white buffalo carving. There is a rosary that I purchased in Ireland. And they're sitting there really nicely together on that altar. It's all sitting there really, really good. There's something there from Scotland. Right? And there is a little statue of a Norse woman representing my relatives in the Netherlands, right? And so when I look at it, it's really pretty sitting there on my altar. I have a candle lit. And those raven feathers represent my Native American ancestors as well. And they're sitting there and they're beautiful and they're all next to one another. They look beautiful. They work together beautifully. So do you. If you want to, cut out part of your internal altar, you're welcome to do that. I choose not to. So can you have an angel next to your eagle feather? Yes, you can. Because you might be that, right? It's a reflection of you. Your spiritual practice should be a reflection of who you are internally. I have my drum, my beautiful new drum, hanging just above my beautiful statue of the Black Madonna. Oh my goodness, is that okay that you have a Canadian-made elk drum hanging above the Black Madonna from France? Yep, it is. I'm here to tell you it is. Now, so what's the difference? Would I bring any of those into my sweat lodge? No. Would I bring my drum? Well, yeah. Would I have those other things in my lodge? No, because that is a ceremony. That is a ceremony unto itself. Would I bring my chanupa into a Catholic church at Sunday Mass? No, that is a ceremony in and of itself. Unless you're Father Two Bowls, because he's a pretty cool guy, right? There are exceptions, like on the reservation, etc. But for me in general, I'm not going to Catholic Mass there at St. Patrick's on the way to Rockford. I'm not going to bring my chanupa and my drum in there unless I'm invited to do so for a specific. But here in my home, it's all together. It's who I am. Am I going to go to Ireland and be in the Stones with Amantha Murphy and bring my chanupa? No. Am I going to go in the stone circles and bring my candles dedicated to Mary as we're... No. But here in my home, in my private spiritual practice, in my altars, everyone plays really nice together because they're a reflection of me. If I'm doing a specific ceremony as a ceremonialist, I know what is appropriate for that ceremony and why the ceremony is being conducted. It's amazing that my never-ending harping at my sons brought them to growing their hair. Oh, I love that, Del. Eldest son says he had a dream about his grandmother, his Unchi, telling him to grow his hair. I think he believes now to talk with his ancestors. Yes. I love that. Kelly is saying 97.9% Norwegian, the rest is Swedish. Well, there you have it. Now, there's a good Norse woman, an American Norse woman, right? I love that. Hey, Charlotte. So when I call myself a ceremonialist, there are ceremonies that I conduct, and in the way that I've been taught them. So I am not going to have in my sweat lodge, in my NEP, anything other than what I have been taught from my sisters, from Arval Looking Horse, Ivan Looking Horse, Wakian Snamani. I've had amazing teachers that have taught me the protocols and the way to conduct those prayers and ceremonies. And I stick to that. The songs are sung in the language of the Lakota people. Yes, that is that. Why don't I call myself a Native American ceremonialist? Because I'm not just a Native American ceremonialist. And the subject of colorization says that most people that look at me would not guess. And it can be a whole ugly conversation. I avoid it. I'm an American mystic and ceremonialist because I'm more than that. People get their knickers in a wad about a whole lot of things, right? I'm me. You're you. Isn't that marvelous? And you have ancestors, and they're speaking to you. The trees are your ancestors. The stones are your ancestors. We all are here on this planet that is right now hurling through the cosmos. We are all here together. And my prayer, my hope, is that we're finally coming to a place around grandmother where we get to honor that, the diversity of gifts, the diversity of skin tones, the diversity of hair color, the diversity of. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? Somebody said, well, why don't you put that you're like a Celtic, whatever, whatever. No, I'm going to talk about things from the perspective of us as Americans. That wonderful amalgam. Do I have a clan tartan for Clan MacDonald? I do. Interestingly, I bought it the last time I was in Scotland without even realizing that I am a bloodline member of Clan MacDonald. Wonder how I knew that. The Bones knew. There in the Highlands of Scotland at Stirling Castle, in the tartan store, I said to Todd, I feel really drawn to this particular tartan. He said, oh, well, okay. So I bought the cape and I bought the scarf and the tam, only to find out, years later, clearly my ancestors were saying, that's the one, right? The 30% of me that is a Scotswoman, a third of me, those ancestors were saying, that's the one. You'll know soon enough, but that's the one. Take that one home. So I do have my clan tartan. Oh my goodness. Part of the mystery is the fun of it, isn't it? Not always knowing in the moment, but understanding that eventually the mystery will reveal why. That divine timing is astonishing. Divine timing. Listening. Being quiet. Feeling. Knowing. Conversing. The best listeners are those that are the best conversationalists, I think. Some people are really great conversationalists. Those are the ones I tend to invite to a formal dinner party. I want the people that know how to converse, not just talk about themselves or talk to others, but those that know how to ask really good questions of others. As mystics, no matter where you're from, one of the best ways to have great conversation with Spirit is not only to listen, but to ask the right questions. And then listen for the answers. Hear them. Be actively involved in the conversation. Yeah. I think by that focus on their heritage, we honor and respect them. Yes. Yes. And when we honor them, it was interesting, we were just down at a festival in Lowell, and I ran across an author who wrote some semi-fictional Civil War novels, and she had a photo of one of the women involved in one of her novels, and she was a Black nurse. Elizabeth King was her name. She was a Civil War nurse and teacher. And when I flipped the card over, I learned that she lived in Georgia and she was married to an Edward King, a plantation owner from Georgia. And in my bloodline, I have said Edward King. So there I am looking at this beautiful Black nurse, Civil War nurse and teacher, astonishing woman. And I said to the author, can I have, are these bookmarkers? Can I buy this photo? She said, no, but you know what? I have an extra, and here you can have it. And so I brought her home with me, and I need to do some more research on Edward and Elizabeth King from Georgia. And I heard in my heart of hearts, I'm your relative. I'm your auntie. And when I flipped that card over and I read her name and who she was married to and where she was from, I was so glad that I listened to the voice that said, stop here, take a look, listen to what this author is saying. I'm glad I listened. I feel as though I've met another ancestor. Oh, the miracles that happen when we stop and listen, when we engage with our soul, with our spirit. With that, everybody, have a gorgeous day. Get out there and shine as only you can shine. Take a moment to listen to your soul today, to listen to spirit, listen to the trees, the birds, the plants, your ancestors. And have a gorgeous day. Blessings be.